Hello, my name is Trejay, and I blog over at heartforwisdom.com. I'm going to try this round two. It just stopped, so it said my signal was just kind of went kaput. So I just want to encourage you that sometimes in life it feels like you're on a roll, and then you lose signal. Have you ever felt like that in your life, where you feel like you're walking with God and things are going pretty good, and then all of a sudden, hey, I think I've lost signal. Is this thing on? Is he listening? And so I just want to bring a word of encouragement to you today. And I want to let you know that breakthrough really is just around the corner. And I want to let you know that those seeds that you've sown in obedience to God, those times of faithfulness, those tears that you've sown, the weeping will turn into joy if you'll faint not. And so I was just thinking, we were in the car with my kids, and we were traveling from one place to another, and so we were going down a different route that they're not familiar with. And so as we were traveling, they kept asking, well, are we there yet? Are you sure we're going the right way? It seems like it's longer. I thought it was supposed to be shorter. And so according to the map, mile-wise, it was shorter. The route that was the shortest route that we were taking. But because of stoplights and traffic and other factors, it seemed to take us forever to get to the destination, at least in their eyes. And so I got to thinking about just how in my own life I feel like that as I'm walking with God and as I'm traveling with God, that there are times where it seems like, he says this is the fastest, the safest, and the shortest route, but it seems like the long way around. Have you ever felt that way? And so I've just been thinking about how you can feel like breakthrough is just around the corner, like something is about to happen. God is moving. He's doing something. It's not evident on the surface. And if we're not careful, we'll judge our circumstances and we'll look at those things instead of looking at what the Word of God says. And we'll look at our circumstances to determine if God's listening, if He's still there, if He loves us, if we're worthy, if we're doing a good job, if we're not doing a good job. And the trap is that the enemy wants us to compare ourselves among ourselves and get to the point where we're just like, okay, well, so-and-so just got this, and this happened. And if I don't have that, then that must mean that my faith isn't working, or that I'm not doing a good job, or something's wrong. And so we get around in this rat wheel of trying to figure out, God, I thought you said we were almost there. And it seems like it's getting farther. It seems like the corner is getting farther. And so I just want to encourage you with just today's treasure that to remember that God is faithful to His word, and to remember Noah. It said that in Genesis that God remembered Noah. And it wasn't because, God all of a sudden had a senior moment and He forgot, that they were in the ark. God was the one that shut the door. God was the one that told him to embark on this journey. God was the one that gave Noah all of the information that he needed to be able to build the ark, to be able to do what needed to be done to get all the animals in there, and just all of those miraculous things of just building for 120 years, for staying faithful at what he was given to do. The miracle of the animals getting onto the boat, just all of the different things that happen. He started well. And I heard this quote by John Piper, and he said that the worst enemy of enthusiasm is time. And I can only imagine just every day as Noah was working on this boat, just how it could have been easy for him to lose that excitement, for him to, be tired of doing the same thing, tired of being faithful, tired of doing the work, or wondering when it was going to pay off, or just the various things that he could have thought. And then when God did close the door, there was more time of waiting, and there are times in our life where we are waiting, and times where it seems like on the surface nothing is happening, but yet there's a whole flurry of activity in heaven as God is preparing and getting things ready and cleaning things up, because that's what was happening while Noah was in the ark. The world was being flooded and things were being cleaned away, and things that were not good were being eradicated. And so sometimes in our life, God is working, and we just may not always feel like it. We may not always see it. It may not look like on the surface to anyone else that God is doing something. But I want to encourage you that your breakthrough really is just around the corner. And maybe you're in the ark right now. Maybe you're in that place of waiting where you can't do anything. You know, it wasn't like Noah could go a whole lot of different places. He couldn't leave the boat. He was on the boat with the other people that were on there, his family, and the animals. And so for a period of time, there was nowhere for him to go. And he could have felt like God had forgotten him. He could have thought, you know, well, are the waters ever going to recede? Is this journey ever going to end? When will it end? And maybe you're in a situation where you feel the same way. I know I do, and I know I have, and many different things. And so it's just, you know, that keeping that enthusiasm, keeping that faith that God will fulfill what he says. And it said that God remembered. And I was looking up the word remember, and it says it's used in the Hebrew. It means God's movement towards a particular person. The essence of God's remembering lies in acting towards someone because of a previous commitment. And so God knew that he had made a commitment to Noah. And so because of God's commitment, there was a time when it was time for that commitment to be fulfilled. There was a time for that promise to be fulfilled. And so I want to encourage you that every promise that God gives you, there is a due season. In Galatians 6:9, it says, not to grow weary in well-doing, for in due season you will reap if you faint not. And so, but it does say due season. So that means that there is a time. And it says to say that God remembered Noah is to say that God faithfully kept his promise to Noah by intervening to end the flood. God will never forget his promises. We may not know when the promise will be fulfilled, but know this, God's promises never have an expiration date. It may take a while. It may seem like a while. He was on the boat. He was building. He was working for 120 years, and then he was on the boat for a while. But God will always deliver on what he promised, and that was something that Charlie King wrote. And so I want to encourage you today that what is the promise that God has given you? Is it promise of restoration of your health? Is it promise of a financial breakthrough? Is it promise of a restoration in a relationship? Or maybe you're believing God for a job, or maybe your kids, or whatever it is, maybe for the new season, because it says, behold, I do a new thing. So maybe you're waiting for that new thing. And so I want to encourage you to remember that God does not forget his word. Remember that God is faithful to his promises, and that there is a set time for your breakthrough. I think about how there are time released capsules. And so the word of God is time released. You know, it says seed time and harvest. You know, that there's seed time and there's harvest. Well, we plant the seed, it takes some time, and then you get a harvest. And in our generation, we have this instant, you know, okay, drive up, let's go, you know, instant everything. And in God's kingdom, it's not that it's not instant, because as soon as the word is spoken, that word is active, it's alive, it's going to work. But it starts underground. It starts in the spirit realm before it manifests in this natural realm. So as soon as that word is spoken in your situation and in your life, it's gone to work immediately to produce an intended result. So I want to encourage you that even though you may not see that seed popping through the ground yet, know that God has a plan for your deliverance. God has a plan for your answers. And so I just kept looking through and just remembering that the Hebrew word for remember is zakar, or Z-A-K-A-R. Not sure if I'm saying it right. But it says it's a call to action, to recall something, to remember. You know, it was time for God to activate his promise to Noah. And so that's what I want to encourage you, that there is a time that that promise will be activated, and you will see in the natural what your faith has already seen in the spirit realm. They will come together and they will meet. I was thinking about this rabbi, and he was talking with one of his members of the synagogue, and they'd come and they said, you know, gosh, we're really cramped where we are, and you know, we just like more room, and we're not really happy, and so what do we do? And so the rabbi's like, well, okay, here's what you do. I want you to go and bring your goat in the house. He's like, we already have 10 people. I'm not bringing a goat in the house. It's messy. And so the rabbi's like, hey, just trust me on it. Bring your goat in, let him stay for a week, and then come back at the end of the week and let me know what happens. And so the guy's like, finally, after some convincing, okay, I'll go home and do it. So he went home and he brought the goat in. And man, they were miserable. The goat was making messes everywhere, stepping on everything, and it was just chaotic. So at the end of the week, the guy goes back to the rabbi and says, oh man, we're miserable. That goat he just won't stop making noise. He's all over the place. He's making messes in the house, And so the rabbi said, okay, great. Now let the goat out of the house. And the guy was like, okay. And so he went home and he let the goat out. And you know what? His whole perspective on his circumstances changed. He was like, this is great. He went back to the rabbi and said, oh, we're so happy. We have so much room. We just feel so good. Well, what happened? The difference was his perspective about his situation. And so sometimes while we're waiting, our perspective can make us or break us. Our perspective can make us grow weary and faint, or it can make us stand strong, let that patience having her perfect work and making us complete and entire so that we're lacking nothing and missing nothing. And so I just want to encourage you today, you are on the threshold of a breakthrough. And as you're praying, you're putting God in remembrance of his word. It's like what we did on Memorial Day, as we're remembering those people, those men and women who gave their lives and to help our country so that we could be free and stay free, and so that we could be able to enjoy the things that we enjoy on a daily basis. And so we spent some time remembering those people. Well, we do the same thing with God. We need to spend time remembering what he's done before, how he's helped us, how he hasn't let us down. And even though things didn't turn out always the way we thought they were going to turn out, somehow God turned something that was bad and made it into something good. And so I was reading out of my Sparkling Gems. I really like Sparkling Gems. It's by Rick Renner. And he was talking about this idea of just remembering. And so he's talking to Timothy, and in this point in time, Timothy is so discouraged. And Timothy is just, he's lost helpers. The church has deserted him. He's tired. He's weary. He's scared. He doesn't know what to do. And so he writes Paul. And Paul himself is actually in the middle of a situation. He's about ready to be beheaded. He knows his time is short. He's been sentenced to death, and he's just waiting for them to come. And any day, one of the guards is going to come, and he knows that his time on earth will end. So he's encouraging his son in the Lord, and he's reminding him to remember. And that's what I want to do to you today, is to remind you to remember God's faithfulness, to remember his promises, to remember that he cannot fail, that nothing is impossible with him, and that nothing is too difficult for him, and that his arm is not too short to save you. And so he's saying, I thank my God, whom I served from my forefathers with a pure conscience. Without ceasing, I have remembrance of thee in my prayers day and night. And so basically what Paul is saying is, look, if nobody else remembers you, I remember you. I'm praying for you. I'm thinking about you. And maybe you don't have a Paul, but you do have a high priest named Jesus who is sitting at the right hand of the Father, lifting you up day and night. You have a Father in heaven who has your name written on the palm of his hands, tattooed, so that every time he moves, every time he looks at his hands, he sees your name. And when he sees your name, he remembers you with love, with kindness. He doesn't look at you and say, oh, boy, you disappoint me time after time after time. No, he remembers you with love. Jesus prays with you intently and passionately, and praying for your success, praying that you do well. And so Rick Renner basically says this, Timothy, My intention is to pray, pray, pray for you until I've set the record straight about your activities, until I've stacked the throne room of God with your name. Anywhere God looks, I want him to see a living memorial of you. I don't want God to ever forget you. Therefore, I am loading heaven with statues, monuments, memorials of you. My prayers for you will stand as an everlasting memorial before God. And so basically what he's telling Timothy is he's like, look, I remember the things that you have done. I know what you have done to serve the Father and to serve him well. I know your faithfulness. And Jesus is saying that about you. I know what you've done to stand for me. I know that it's been tough. I know that every day is not comfy, cozy, and easy going and, easy street. But I've prayed for you. He told Peter, the enemies desired to sift you, but I have prayed for you. And I want to encourage you that God has done the same thing for you, that Jesus is sitting on the right hand of the Father, praying fervently, passionately for your success, praying fervently and passionately for you to overcome, for you to thrive and not just to survive your situation. So be encouraged that not only does God remember you, but you can remember God and remember how faithful he is. Remember that he will never let you down. It may not happen the way you think or the time that you want it to happen, but know that your deliverance will come. God has a way of rewarding those who are faithful to him. So if you've gotten kind of weary or you've kind of sunk down or maybe stopped expecting God to work or to move, be encouraged to get back up on it. A righteous man falls down 7 times, but he gets up. God will pick you up and God will help you and get you where you need to go. So be encouraged today that God remembers that he has a set time for your deliverance, and it is now. So be encouraged that you are victorious, that God has a plan, a good plan for your life, and that it's never too late for you to be what God has intended for you to be. So take some time today, get in the Word, build yourself up, put aside all the thoughts of fear and doubt and everything that says that you can't make it, that your breakthrough is never going to come, and get back on that faith stand. And just be encouraged that God will pick you back up. He'll give you the endurance. Many places Paul would pray that they would have endurance, that they would have the patience that they needed. So that's my prayer for you today, is that you'll have the endurance, you'll have the patience, that you'll run the race, and that you'll be able to hear, well done, thou good and faithful servant. So thanks for joining me today, and we will see you the next time. Bye-bye for today.